Hello Internet, I'm Lex Chase, and the crew at Sinfully had me back once again to do a super fantastic exclusive reading of my DSP Publications release, Chasing Sunrise. So, what is that exactly? Chasing Sunrise is a high fantasy horror featuring King Seven Marate as he is the ruler of the cannibalistic Isa, and it is his struggle to escape lifelong domestic violence and save his crumbling kingdom. He thinks he's manipulated into believing his only way out is invading the prosperous land of Preagust and kill all the shifters and take their stuff. That's the idea anyway. So hope presents itself in the form of the kindly shifter Jack, who basically challenges Seven, to question what he believes and all he knows. So, however, it is a story of war, genocide, and how love makes monsters of us all. Do not mistake, this is a very, very dark story. Hello, it's a horror. Thank you. Anyhow, today I'm reading from Chapter 12, featuring fan favorite Captain Bianca of the Armigers. So here we are in the point of the story where Seven is beginning to question Dominic's motivations. But under Dominic's lifelong abuse, he really doesn't know who to trust and who to reach out to. So he thinks he's going to reach out to Bianca, but can he trust her after all? And with his growing attraction to Jack, he really doesn't know what the hell is going on. So, in his mind, he thinks men are all built the same and, they only want one thing. So, can he trust Bianca? And we shall see, and away we go. And now, a message from our sponsor. You have no idea how many tries this has taken so far to get this right. I thought you would enjoy. So here we go again. Ready? Chapter 12. The furious skies raged over Darkmoor, and Seven clutched his chest while the thunder boomed inside his ribcage. His imagination tricked him into thinking his father was looking upon him from the heavens and shaking his head in shame. Was this what he let himself become? A king fascinated by beasts? Not only fascinated, but seduced to their savage ways? Seven hurried from the sanctity of his residence, his burgundy skirts fluttering like blood-stained wings behind him. He rushed past the tapestries from times long ago, from the Renaissance of Darkmoor long destroyed. He flew by the busts of his powerful ancestors. Their dignified doctrines could not save him. He scrambled down the network of halls, away from Jack's thoughts buzzing in his mind, and his ghostly impression of Jack's hands on his body. Seven was on a dedicated mission for solace, and for peace from Jack's seduction, and from the haunting chill of Dominic's lies. Dominic wouldn't lie, Seven thought, even though he doubted it. He couldn't deny his attraction to what people called a filthy shifter. He couldn't conceive what would happen if his people knew. Seven promised not to let Dominic hear his doubts. If he convinced himself enough he had love for Dominic, no one would be any wiser. The idea of running away with Jack to Preagust filled Seven's heart with a lust for freedom. That's all it was. Lust. Preagust may have seemed appealing at the moment, but what would happen when difficulties arose? What would happen without Dominic to take care of him? Was Seven mad for thinking Jack would care for him? He had never had a need to be on his own. Would he survive? No, I can't, Seven thought. I can't. Seven was king, but Dominic was the one in control. Now Seven's thoughts were no longer his own. Jack's laughter echoed in his mind as overwhelming confusion. With paranoia throbbing in his chest, he quickly looked over his shoulder. He considered the left hall, and then the right one. He picked up his silk skirts between his fingertips and headed left to the Armiger barracks. Seven swallowed and tapped his knuckles on the oak door. He entered without announcing himself. "Bianca!" he stammered in fright. He blushed hotly at the sight of Bianca, nude and pleasuring her lover, Cheney. Bianca sat back on her ankles in the bed. She regarded him respectfully, despite her utter lack of clothing. "Your Majesty," she greeted him. "Is something wrong?" Bianca shifted away, revealing Cheney underneath her. She allowed enough room for Cheney to pull a sheet over herself. Cheney sat back on the headboard. Seven bounced on the balls of his feet. He looked over his shoulder at the empty hall. I didn't think I'd interrupt, he muttered. Bianca sighed and pushed from the bed. She unhooked a robe from the rack and slipped it on. How may I be of service? She asked with a nod. Can we talk? Just talk, Seven asked. About Priagust. Seven wrung his hands and pressed his lips together. His mind already ran itself in circles over walking in on Bianca and Cheney, her chrono, in intimate relations. Bianca's eyes narrowed slightly, and Cheney glanced between the two of them. Certainly, Bianca said in a clipped, agitated staccato. I'll see myself out, Cheney interjected. Seven frowned, and his gut rumbled with guilt. He wondered if perhaps he might have stared too much, or perhaps being discovered made her uncomfortable. But Cheney knew something Seven couldn't quite remember. The hands of Jack's soul glided over the length of his body in reminder. Seven shivered and self-consciously crossed his arms. Cheney spoke up again in farewell. Your Majesty, Captain. At Bianca's nod, Cheney slipped out the door and delicately clicked it shut behind her. Seven paced a trail in the modest room, shyly taking a look at what defined the royal guards that had been with the Marathe line for millennia. He was quite surprised to find modesty. The tiny, no-frills quarters spoke of a person of lesser rank, and not a warrior queen. Bianca had done her best to make it a home. The tall shelves of books had been installed, and boasted tomes from great masters, as well as dime-store filth, written by human hands. In a corner sat a small, unassuming desk, with a candelabrum perched on a corner. On the chestnut wooden desktop, a half-scrawled symphony lay incomplete on a sheaf of yellow parchment. The writing quill and an inkwell patiently awaited its master's scribe to return to diligent work. Bianca gestured to the desk's plush seat. Please, she offered. Sit. Bianca took a seat in the corner of the room, watching Seven. Seven daintily picked up his skirts and settled neatly into the chair. He huffed with a sigh of relief. I just... Seven stammered for words. I just can't think. Ever since we went to Priagust, it's like my thoughts aren't my own. I can't remember everything clearly. Your thoughts aren't your own? Bianca asked curiously. How so? Seven pressed his fingertips together and considered his words. It's like the prisoner, Jack. I can feel him in my mind. Bianca's brow arched with the slightest hint of intrigue. Did you feed on him? You're not mature enough yet to bond. Have you even considered who your advocate will be when the time comes? Seven frowned and bowed his head. I haven't screened mothers to begin a pedigree. I thought that day was centuries away. Did you feed on him? Bianca repeated the damning question. Seven curled his fingers into fistfuls of his skirts. How else is he inside my head? He muttered. Cheney told me, Bianca said flatly. She told me a lot. She made sure to keep Kerrigan off your trail at the orgy. Seven balked with revulsion. What orgy? He demanded. What are you talking about? According to Cheney, you were quite enthusiastic on your advances on Jack, Bianca commented while considering her black lacquered nails. Seven quickly shook his head. No, no, no! He snapped childishly. It wasn't like that. Bianca gave him her full attention. That's not what Cheney said. Well, Cheney's a liar, Seven snapped, his lip quivering. His stomach clenched with the memory, his hands balled into fists. Seven masked his panic. If Bianca knew of his lie, she could sense Seven's want for Jack. Bianca stood and squared her shoulders. Are you calling my wife a liar? She growled. Seven's gaze turned toward his booted toes, and he bit his bottom lip. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. He nervously looked up at Bianca. You said something to Dominic in the conservatory about opening the veil could hurt me. You were so angry that day. Bianca relaxed her imposing stance and bit her thumbnail in contemplation. It was an error, she said slowly. My anger was misplaced. May I ask you something? Not as the king, as Seven, the fledgling Vercoli. Seven perked up, his curiosity tingled. Please do. Bianca nodded, and Seven watched her mouth, eagerly awaiting the words to spill from her gray lips. Finally, Bianca spoke. How much do you trust Dominic? Instantly, Seven's face flushed, and his spine straightened. He had to think of a quick answer. Surely Bianca would tell Dominic. The news always traveled to Dominic eventually. No one could know how Seven's mind turned to the idea of escape. What kind of question is that? He snapped. Bianca had to be tricking him into letting his guard down. He babbled his perfectly rehearsed answers. Yes, I trust him with my life. I love him, and he loves me. Once Jack gives us the information, we can start a new life in Pre-August. What Seven didn't say was that he meant he and Jack could start a new life. He bristled. How could he think that? He barely knew what kind of man Jack was. Was he falling for another trap? Seven's fingers once again curled into fists in his lap, and he found himself in that awkward place of being aware everything he had just said wasn't true in the slightest. He frowned, forcing his lip to stop trembling. Bianca merely narrowed her eyes. Seven thought she resembled the way a cat disinterestedly considered a human. Did she see through his fallacy? And would she tell Dominic? It's all right, Seven, Bianca said quietly. You're safe here. Seven knew in that moment Bianca couldn't be trusted. The palace had ears, and the Armiger barracks had the most ears. I trust him, Seven said firmly, but distinctly didn't specify who he meant. Bianca frowned. How are you getting this information from Jack? She said, not acknowledging if she knew the truth. Seven sighed, knowing his secret will remain a secret. The mask of the monarch he had always assumed as a method of protection washed over him. He's in the dungeon, being interrogated. I've been put in charge of the process. Do you enjoy it? Seven watched her. There was suspicion in her gaze. Seven straightened. Whether or not I enjoyed the act of torturing a man is of no concern to you. Your Majesty, Bianca said, and Seven felt the cold slap of being addressed by title. I must remind you, as a member of the Marathe royal line, you must consider the scope of what you're bringing on yourself. No good can come of this. Your father wouldn't want this. Anger bloomed across Seven's face, and rage tingled on his skin at Bianca's declaration, as she stabbed right in the most sensitive part of his soul. Who are you to presume to know what my father would want? Seven growled, again with the assumption that Seven was an inferior king. What made his father such a great man? The anger poisoned him. My father abandoned me with a rotting city and a starving populace. What has my father done? Bianca snarled and slapped her fist to the desk. The inkwell jumped in fright. Your father was a noble and honorable man. He did many things for his people you haven't even thought of how to do. Seven shot out of seat and roared in Bianca's face. You dare doubt me. I am your king. Do not forget who you swore fealty to. Bianca didn't flinch. She spat the words in his face. I swore fealty to Louis Amadeus de Marathe. I did not, nor do not, swear fealty to a boy puppet king. Now sit down and mind your fucking manners. You are royal. Do not forget that. Seven knew Bianca had a point, and in her bold declaration it proved she wasn't allied to Dominic. Seven was still uncertain if she was lying, to lure him into a false sense of security. He had resolved this was a test. The fact remained that it didn't make her harsh words any less unfair. He balled his hands into fists and shook them with restrained anger. He pressed his lips together tightly and screamed into his throat before flopping back in the chair. His skirts crunched with a graceless landing. Bianca crossed her arms and rested her hip against the desk. One day you'll realize there are people with your best interests at heart. Seven pushed out of the chair and straightened his skirts. He made a prim snort of disdain and addressed her. Your attentions have been noted, Captain, but I believe our discourse cannot continue in a civil fashion. If you'll excuse me, I have pressing matters to attend to. Seven slipped past her to the door, leading back into the hall. Bianca called in his wake. My hand will always be extended. It is up to you to take it or spit at it. Seven furiously slammed the door behind him and stormed down the hall. There were no use hiding his tears now. They freely escaped in droplets of glittering gold. He had to get away. He had to collect his thoughts. He was so foolish to think he could have gone to Bianca. He wanted so desperately to be able to confide in someone. Anyone. No one could possibly understand what he was going through. He crushed away one of his tears with the heel of his palm as he turned a corner. He gasped when he crashed into Cheney. He staggered 2 steps back from her. "You're going to tell him, aren't you?" Seven demanded. There's no use denying the connection to the Armigers to Dominic now. If Seven couldn't get Bianca to say it, he'd make Cheney confess it. "My secrets stay with Bianca, and Bianca's secrets stay with her," she said calmly. Seven's lip quivered. "You're speaking nonsense," he croaked. Cheney smiled and rested a hand on Seven's shoulder. Seven shivered on the soothing touch. "I believe you," she said. "You don't think that now, but you and Bianca are a lot alike. Both of you have suffered much in your lives." Seven's shivers turned into tremors. I just wanted someone to believe me." And that concludes the reading. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you feel how it's going to turn out for Seven. I hope you read the book, and I hope you tell me what you think. And this concludes all the awesome times, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm rambling, but whatever. And don't forget about the giveaway, and stay tuned for on social media of Facebook and Twitter of where I'm going to be next. And this is all there is to it. So check out the book, and I look forward to all your thoughts, and all your screaming, and all your angsting, and all your maybe throwing Kindles across the room, and hanging tight, and sticking with it. So this is Lex Chase, signing off. Peace.